We have a good one because we're going to be here in South Florida. We're going to be at an outdoor tiki bar. Screens all over the place, good-looking girls. And it made you want to go back and turn the clock back quite a bit because there weren't the percentage of good-looking women when I was at Syracuse University it was mostly early 70s. I got there in 69. The ratio of good-looking girls to total women in the student body was nowhere close to what it is today.
Oh,
is that a fair statement?
Well, for you, yeah. I mean, you were in Syracuse too, so they were covered up the whole freaking year. I mean, FSU was literally renowned, and working out was a big deal at FSU. So, like, the women were in great shape. Plus, you had FAM and then TCC, and the women were fantastic. And it's an era where people were taking care of themselves. That's the other thing too. When you were going to college, we didn't know all the things we knew about nutrition, about exercise. People were very active. It was extremely talented, to say the least.
And you were in the sunshine, Lubie.
Yes,
as you mentioned, this was frozen tundra time. I mean, you were likely to pick up a girl who looked like Jerry Kramer. Just because he might be able to throw a block. We didn't get to see much. The general rule of thumb was if you didn't find somebody to shack up with for the winter at registration, you were going to be pretty much out of luck. You were going to be going to the gym in the cold and trying to play pickup basketball and maybe hoping some of the guys that were on the Syracuse team, whether it was freshman or varsity, were in the gym there so that you could get the feeling that you could have competed. And then how did Jimmy Boeheim overlook you as a walk-off for the squad?
The time! Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Very pleasant. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, the handsome gentleman there, the young guy who just described what sounds like a fantasy trip to Florida State University compared to what I experienced. To show you, you mentioned nutrition, Lubie, and it struck me. I still remember, I have a vivid, indelible impression of this sign when I first was perusing the locker room at the Manley Fieldhouse, getting ready to participate in a little Syracuse baseball. And the locker room was shared by many different athletes from different teams. It was a gigantic place. And there was a sign on the wall, and it said, and I can still see it in big block letters, the Y of salt. And then they had a dispenser that had salt tablets in it. And they were recommending that all other athletes gargle with these salt tablets to try and help them with high. That was the idea of a performance-enhancing drug back then. Yeah. Salt tablets. You couldn't have done any more damage to your system than to be taking any of these. I mean, can you imagine wanting to load up on salt, Lubie? That was the science. That was the sports medicine at the time. And, of course, it evolved to the point now where people are into macrobiology. You got Tom Brady out there. What the hell is Tom Brady eating to look that good?
I don't know.
Does he have a book out about that? He must.
Yeah.
What happened to the guru, too, that Bill Belichick hated?
Great question. I think they're in business together.
Belichick and the guru? Or wouldn't that be something if Belichick told the guy, hey, you can't ride on a team plane here. I don't want you anywhere around Tom. He's got to play quarterback for us. And then they went partners. And maybe that's the secret behind Belichick being able to tap this 24-year-old chick at 72. I don't know. God. I can't imagine keeping up with a 24-year-old. Lubie, I don't even know if you can at this. Well, you're still in your prime. You're in your sexual prime. I don't want to get too deeply into our sex lives here because it would be a very empty show. All right, yesterday was about Juju and Zhao for me. Juju and Zhao.
Okay.
Means like something you would order in a Thai restaurant, no? Juju and Zhao. I'll have the Juju and Zhao. And I mean, I have no luck with women's basketball, Lubie. I really don't. And I'm trying not to be as dismissive as we have been on the show, although the ugliness of the early rounds of the women's NCAA tournament, I almost said WNBA, but at least the WNBA, the games are competitive, are they not? Whereas in the NCAA tournament, it was a joke the first couple of rounds, and it continued. It persists into the next. What round are they on, by the way, in the women's NCAA tournament? Are they on round 2 yet?
This is the second round.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it happened. I'm watching this tennis match from the Miami Open between João Fonseca, who is a Brazilian young superstar. He established himself with a couple of big wins at the Australian Open. He popped on the scene. Everybody was talking about, wow, have you seen this kid? A star is born. I forget who he knocked off in the early rounds. But he didn't win the tournament. I don't even think he advanced that far, but made an indelible impression upon people. as an upcoming and rising star. He kind of is to this season what Carlos Alcaraz, who, by the way, what happened to that guy, Libby? Are you following tennis at all? I know you're not a huge fan, but
Not
how come
anymore.
Alcaraz can't win anymore?
I don't know. That's it. It's funny. Shirley was actually at the tennis yesterday. She didn't
Oh, yeah.
mention it at
What a
all.
great day it was, too, for that.
She was in a box, so she just mentioned the food. She didn't say anything about the actual tennis. So I didn't get any updates there. Yeah, you haven't mentioned Alcaraz in a while, so that's I was wondering.
He hasn't been winning. He's been getting knocked out in early rounds of tournaments. I believe he might have won one tournament this year, but it was not the same type of play that we've seen from this guy. You would think, I guess, it's not sophomore jinx because he's been around a couple of years. He's not having health issues as far as I know, but that guy that should be evolving to almost unbeatable status, where you thought you were going to have a new big 3 or 4 with Yannick Sinner, who's been suspended for the last couple of months and probably doesn't return. I think he returns at the French Open or somewhere right around there after this really bogus and controversial drug suspension that he is enduring right now, where they suspended him for 3 months, even though they absolved him and said he shared no blame. They completely condoned what he said in terms of his reasoning for having whatever illegal substance it was in his body. And they did buy his story that it really came from an outside source where he was getting massage therapy from a guy who was on this stuff. And it didn't sound like anything that was, it wasn't like it was Jose Canseco with a syringe in his ass as he came up to the plate. But nonetheless, so he's out. So you thought it was going to be Sinner and Alcaraz and maybe a couple of these other young up-and-comers, and Fonseca would be one of them. But he gets knocked out in a tennis bloodbath yesterday. If Shirley was around for the night matches, I would imagine she was there in the daytime. But
Yeah, she was gone by night.
If she was around for the night matches, this was a thrill in Manila. And as we were talking about, the Brazilian population here has completely overtaken any rooting interest in American players or any other players for that matter. And this Fonseca has a following that is incredible at the Miami Open. I would imagine they'll find Brazilians if he's playing in Indianapolis. Is there a huge Brazilian population there? One would think not, but they find their way into the arena and they got banners and they're playing trumpets and bugles and all kinds of stuff, vuvuzelas, and they go nuts after every point. But that match was in a little bit of they were in a changeover. So I flip on the NCAA women's basketball game. And it's USC, and I become a fan of watching this Juju Watkins. Is she the second coming of Cheryl Miller in a USC uniform? Does she play a similar game as Cheryl Miller?
You'd have to tell me. I know Miller was great. I never got to see any of her career.
Well, that makes it easy for me to pull off this comparison, because you have
whatever you say.
As probably is the case with a lot of people, because even though Cheryl Miller was great and was an attraction, nobody was watching women's college basketball at that time. Now, you may have seen her later on and competing in Olympics and things like that. But I'm not sure if their games really have a parallel, but Juju Watkins appears to be one of those versatile players that can do it all. And I was finding her very entertaining to watch. And so I flip over to the game USC is playing for a split second, Lubie. And what happens? Juju Watkins is on a break, but she's kind of going 1-on-2. She tries, like she's a racehorse at Gulfstream Park, tries to slice her way. He's going to try and find a small hole there. And it got covered up. And she gets sort of sandwiched between two of the opponent's players and goes down, clutching her knee, and that's it. Torn ACL, out for the season. And you would have to think, if you were a women's college basketball player, you would have to believe that you make more money in NIL and whatever they're paying you, whatever they want to call it, than you would as a WNBA player. Is that true, Lubie? So you would think that this wasn't it for her at USC. Women's college basketball players more likely to go to distance. You don't have a lot of one-and-doners in women's college basketball.
No. But I mean, you'll go as a junior, though. I think Caitlin Clark. Did Caitlin Clark make a senior year? Like, you'll leave as a junior, right? The WNBA money has gotten a little bit better, and then now we are seeing ads for WNBA players. But yes, Juju Watkins, I've seen in multiple national ads as a college player. You don't really see that with WNBA. I don't know. I have to see what year she is. It's interesting because she's the kind of player that would go number one, and even in the WNBA, the number one pick usually still gets a nice chunk. So I'll look up what her year is. But yeah, it's just a sad way to end the season because they were one of the teams that people thought could really win it all, and she's one of the players that people thought could bring attention to like a championship game or a Final Four.
I have UConn going all the way, by the way, Lubie. UConn.
I mean, everyone does.
South Carolina is looking good, and there are other teams that would be in the mix there. But UConn, Gino, I think he's going to do it again, and he's going to give the finger to everybody right after the tournament is over. Gino Auriemma. Oh, has he become more of a gracious individual, Gino Auriemma, or is he still the same cocky bastard that he was all during UConn's fabulous runs? But anyway, yeah, so that was a shame. I mean, you talk about a real bummer. And just an absolute downer. You turn on the TV for 3 seconds. You figure, okay, I'm going to try to get into this and see what's going on. And as soon as I do, there's Juju Watkins being carried off the floor. And you had to think that it was something that was going to be of a very serious nature. It did not look like something she was going to be able to shake off. And sure enough, surgery on the books. And that's it for the season for Juju Watkins. And maybe, well, we don't know. It's hard to speculate on this.
She's 19.
College career.
If she's 19, so the older she could be is a sophomore. Usually
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, why would I want to say that she was a sophomore? She's either a freshman or a sophomore.
She's 19.
We shouldn't have introduced this because it shows you how little we know about what we're talking about here on the show.
No, I think she played last year, so she's definitely not a freshman. Like she's a sophomore. And yeah, so I don't know if they usually go after their sophomore year. Like I would see her coming back for another year. We'll see with the rehab. That sucks. That became like the story of the night. I mean, she became one of these women players that did cross over into mainstream / the man's world that even people like me who knew who she was. I hadn't seen much of her game, but I've seen her. She's all over the place. Like her with Jaden Daniels at the tournament game Sunday was like a big freaking deal. I mean, she's one of the faces that even with Caitlin Clark, she still got a lot of attention. Like that's really sad.
Imagine this. Andy points this out. Compared to Dan Hurley, Gino Auriemma is literally, he's like,
he's sweet.
Red Holtzman, as Andy put it.
He's like Sister Jean. Compared to
but that was it. I mean, I took a shot. I tried, to take a little look at everything. We've had these soccer rants over the years where people call in and say, various disparaging things about us and our opinion that soccer was a game invented by a mutant society, should not be played unless it's designed to be punishment, which it was for me when I was in junior high school. They would take the basketball away and say, okay, you know what? Until we figure out who graffitied the men's room, you're going to play soccer for the rest of the year until somebody rats somebody out. And New York, I mean, it was kind of a code of ethics there that you weren't going to rat out anybody, even if you didn't even care for the guy. But after a while, I mean, of playing soccer, you really thought about, it was Barzini all along. You're ready to run right to the principal's office and of course, first address the gym coach and say, could we just get our basketball back? I can't run up and down in a meaningless fashion and try to kick a ball into a goal that is the size of the Grand Canyon, and nobody can do it because nobody really gives a flying one about this game. Talk about futility. That was it. But nonetheless, rough day there for USC and the people that are fans of women's basketball. Unless you're not a big USC fan, if you root for UCLA, you're never happy to see somebody injured.
No.
That's for sure. All right, a little bit of a respite from the NCAA tournament, the men's tournament. We do have the odds out there for the games. We're going to talk to Lenn Robbins here on the program in just a few minutes. He's going to join us about 8:30 this morning on the East Coast. The game's not expected to be overwhelmingly close, Lubie. The shortest priced game is the Michigan State game, which scares me a little bit because I have Michigan State going to the Final Four. Michigan State. They were not impressive in their last ball game. Now, what kind of an indicator is that? Do we allow everybody to have one where they really don't look like themselves? Michigan State, supposed to be a defensive stalwart. I love the line there by Tom Izzo. Post-game interviews. Post-game interviews were great. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday on the program. These coaches are fantastic. And you could take the soundbite from any one of several coaches after the ball game. I'm thinking of three in particular, and that would go viral for sure. I mean, Calipari with the classic, they had us in the coffin, but they forgot to nail it shut. Talking about Arkansas, which now people are recording a pretty good shot, even though very prohibitive. The odds on the Arkansas game, I believe Arkansas is getting 8.5 points in their ball game in the next round of the tournament, the Sweet 16. Duke is an 8.5 point favorite. Tennessee favored by 4.5 over a Kentucky team that beat them twice in a regular season. What do you make of that? Is that an opportunity to make a score?
Well, it's like your Vitas Garlitis. I mean, it's hard to beat a team a third time. Like that's just beating a team twice is tough enough, but to beat a team a third time, and Tennessee's been the better team the entire year. They're thinking at some point Tennessee will get their act together and put Kentucky away. That I'm not sure about. I actually picked Kentucky out the gates in my bracket just because I felt like they're the kind of team that if they get rolling, they could be scary.
Yeah, it was coming on. Arkansas is only getting 5.5 from Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a team that the professor has been all over, and many other people think that Texas Tech has a legitimate shot to be, I don't know that they would quite qualify as Cinderella, but certainly a little bit of a fairy tale there if they end up winning the championship, because you didn't see anybody. Jay Billis, as you mentioned, Texas Tech at any time in his lifetime. He's got to be salivating.
Really. I mean, weren't they in the title game a few years ago?
Texas Tech.
They've made runs in the past. But yes, they're not usually a program you think about, especially when it comes to basketball. Like in the past, with Mike Leach, you thought about them with college football, but it's rare to think of Texas Tech and college basketball.
All right. I'm a little nervous about my pick. I would need Houston to win it all for me to prosper on the tournament in terms of any kind of bracketology. And I really just did that because Duke appears to be the obvious favorite. They've slaughtered two teams on their way to the Sweet 16, playing in a perfect sync. Even with Cooper Flagg in their lineup, that Tyrese Proctor guy, just been sensational so far. John Shire appears to have emerged and be very comfortable in the role of replacing Coach K. Not an easy thing to do. Often talk about my man Gene Bartow, one of my first interviews I ever did. I wasn't even in the professional journalistic ranks then. I was just trying to get a writing sample of some sort that I could send out to 50 newspapers and see if I could latch on as somebody that was sorting out things in the mailroom. And so I managed to arrange an interview with Gene Bartow, who at the time was the first-year head coach of the UCLA Bruins, replacing the Wizard, John Wooden. He goes, I think if you look it up, he was like something like 25-6, maybe even better than that. And they literally wanted to toss this guy into the La Brea Tar Pits. Tough to do to replace a legend, but Shire's done a very nice job of, can I use this word on the show? Transitioning?
Yes.
Why are we reluctant to say anything anymore? Because as soon as you do, whoosh, you're diving into the realm of politics.
Everything's politics now, yeah.
I was in on that call, by the way. That was great. I know exactly what time those bombs were going to explode.
Oh, God, that's it.
That was some story yesterday that emerged. All right, NBA activity, Lubie. Are you completely shut down from the regular season? There things to be decided, Lubie. Things to be decided in the last few games of the regular season.
I'm tracking it. It's just been a disappointing season for the Heat, so it's sort of cast a pall over the entire season. They have, I guess, a big one tonight
against Golden State.
I don't know what to do with tonight's game. They're going to
go a big one for Golden State, you would have to think. Well, we talked about this yesterday, and this is interesting because this is the town without pity. It's Gene Pitney City here, the town where indifference sets in. We're talking about South Florida, where we reside. And you can look at the teams. You've had a mixed bag of commitment, I would say, but the Miami Heat in general are regarded as the team, in spite of the fact that everybody thinks that Pat Riley is such an old fart now that he just doesn't have it anymore, that he's suffering from dementia, which I wouldn't agree with. You have stated many times, and we've had Scoop Skolnick on, who is as much of an authority on the NBA and the Miami Heat as anybody that we speak to, with all due respect to the great Ira Winderman. But Winderman, I don't know, is he committed elsewhere or something? We never speak to Winderman. Oh, he is? Okay.
He's always had contracts with this station. But even then, I like Skolnick. I mean, again, we could have more than one person, so that's
Yeah.
fine. I would never be against having Ira Winderman on, but like Skolnick does a great job. So
Yes.
I'm good with him as much as Ira Winderman.
If you have a guy who is, I mean, seems to be unbiased, it's not like he's out there shilling for the Miami Heat, even though he covers them and has so extensively for many, many years. It's not like he's one of those guys, commentators. The Heat might be an example. They're absolutely fine. Their local
Yeah, your internet's wavering, but you're coming back. So give it a second, and I think you're coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
Because I was delivering a statement there. It's always lost, isn't it, cyberspace? But the only thing I've said of significance in the first 23 minutes of the show gets lost. Well, I hadn't said anything of significance. I put a little parenthetical in there. The Heat look to be locked in at least to this 10th spot in the postseason.
Yeah.
Right now, they would play it goes 7 versus 10, doesn't it, in the opening play-in game, and then 8 takes on 9. So they would play the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, who are not a frightening opposition type of opponent, but and I'm not sure what their head-to-head record is, but nonetheless, the Hawks, if they were playing the Knicks, I think they would be much more of a threat. The Heat, you don't see them doing anything. Well, what if they manage to get by the play-in round and get into the actual field there, Lubie? How would you feel about the team then?
So they would be the 8, right? They would be the 8 eventually.
No, I don't think they're moving up. They might make it to 9, but
I'm saying if they got through, you're saying if they got through the
yeah, then they would be in the 8th spot and they would take on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
They actually play the Cavs well. I mean, maybe they get a game because you do have actually a lot of guys on that roster that are good players. They just haven't become a cohesive unit. So I could see Hero and Bam going off. Wiggins, as we like, those 3 guys can get you a game in the playoffs. Those 3 guys have played big, all of them in conference finals and and finals games. So there's no reason why they couldn't win a game versus the Cavs. I would just have the series on just cause like I don't see the Heat getting. It would be like the Celtics last year. Yeah, they got a game. Okay, like they're not going to get more than that. So I just read a thing that explains what we were talking about. Yes, they definitely want the higher the draft pick possible because that's the way they keep it. And Scoop wrote, it's interesting if they lose out and get to 10 because they'll have then like the worst record, but they're pretty much locked into the 10. They'll get or Ira Winderman, actually was Winderman who wrote this of all things. They would be the 8. They would get the 8th pick and then still be in the play-in. But if they, win games and get to the 10, then they may have a different record, so they wouldn't have the 8. So like it actually helps them because they'll probably be in the 10 regardless.
Yes.
To like not win a lot.
Looks that way, looking at the standings.
Get to the 10 and get the 8th pick because the 8th pick, this draft isn't the deepest draft, but I mean, they seem to find guys. So it's higher than they've been drafting in the last few years. So it wouldn't be the worst thing to have this crappy year, but get a decent pick out of it.
11 games left to play, one of which is against Golden State. So the question was this, and I'm not sure that we totally defined your reaction.
Okay.
I'm thinking the man is worthy of at least some kind of respectful salutation for what he did here. Now, the sour exit of Jimmy Butler would have tainted, I would think, almost any crowd to the point where people became disgusted with the whole thing. I couldn't wait to see this guy go elsewhere. And I'm not a fan of sulking. I don't want to be like Robert De Niro in the movie The Fan, where, he was so upset that he actually killed a guy because he wasn't fulfilling his potential. That was a little far-fetched. Like I said, among sports movies.
That's a lot.
The only movie I would rather see less than that The Fan movie was, of course, One on One with Robbie Benson, which was an atrocity. Did that movie do anything at the box office? I can't imagine. When you finish putting that thing in a can as a director, you go, wow, we really got something here. Why do we submit this to the Oscars? Piece of crap. $1 Million Baby was highly acclaimed, and it was a piece of junk, wasn't it? The last 45 minutes, you're screaming, die already, die already. Even with Clint Eastwood standing there by your bedside. You were thinking, hey, Swank, just check out, please. We can't take this. It really became literally like the Terry Schiavo story. I make that allusion a lot, and a lot of people wouldn't remember the Terry Schiavo thing where she was on life support for 16 years, and Jeb Bush wouldn't allow the family. They had already conceded that there was no chance this woman was ever going to get another brainwave again on her own. And the family is begging the people in Tallahassee, please, please let us cut this off. But of course, Florida being somewhat influenced by religion, right-wing religion, was saying, oh, no, we can't do that. You would put a dog down under those considerations. Yeah. My God. But yeah, that was just absolutely an atrocity and an ugly thing. But yeah, I mean, in this case, never mind the movie reviews here. Well, what am I, Siskel and Ebert all of a sudden? Yeah. We're talking about Jimmy Butler. I'm thinking, if I'm at the ball game tonight, Golden State comes to town, an attraction. Steph Curry's supposed to come back, but not necessarily play in this game, but he is with the team after suffering, what did he have, an ankle injury, Steph Curry? Now, if you bought tickets for this game, you're thinking to yourself that this is what I wanted to see, but you also have, does Jimmy Butler, is he deserving of a salutation of some sort, Lubie, or do you think it's going to be a mixed bag?
Well, they've already announced they're going to do a video thing. I mean, look, he is the third best player in Heat history. I love Zoe. I love Tim Hardaway. There's been some talent in the short time of the Miami Heat. Shaq, of all things, helped them get their first title. Jimmy Butler is their third best player ever. I mean, the guy did things that only LeBron and Wade were able to do. And those are two of the top 25 to 30 players ever. So, like, what he did here is something that, look, Knicks fans would be very happy to go to 3 conference finals and 2 NBA finals. Like, we're just spoiled. You know, the Heat have been to 7 finals in the last, 20 years? Less than 20, 15, 18 years. Like, it's just impressive what they've done, and Jimmy Butler is a part of that lore. It's just the way. Look, it's not even that he left or wanted to be traded. It was literally the way he did it. And all these guys that have asked out Kevin Durant and James Harden and LeBron in his own way, like they've all done it. Even Harden, who did it the closest to this, it wasn't like what Butler was doing was just dumb. Like he was like sitting there chucking shots, and then he wasn't going to play, and then he wouldn't travel with the team, and then he was getting all of it out to the media for no reason. When the Heat were covering up whatever he was doing, they were allowing him to do it. They were letting him get away with stuff. Like if LeBron got away with the stuff he got away with, maybe LeBron might have stayed. Like, but they learned from LeBron. That's the funny thing about that cookie story is Riley learned. Riley treated Jimmy. We heard the stories from Ethan that like Butler got treated in a way he got like LT treatment from like the Giants. Like, so to then do that was weird to me. Like, you want to leave, you want your contract, fine. But the way he did it was just weird. But he deserves it. He deserves it. I mean, what he did here was something we had really never seen. Even the LeBron era, they had Bosh and Wade. Like the guys he was surrounded by. And they tried to bring better talent. But yes, if you look at the guys they were surrounded by, it was like G League roster level talent. And they went to 2 finals and 3 conference finals. Like, and the 3rd conference final, they went to the last shot in game 7 in Boston. Like, what he did here was impressive and he deserves it. It was just annoying the way he
Are you standing up and applauding, Libby? That's the question.
I would
you're an extremist when it comes to being a fan. We know that. Are you booing Jimmy Butler tonight?
I wouldn't boo, but I wouldn't stand up. I would give him an applause, but I wouldn't be doing a standing O. I mean, he left on weird terms.
2 minutes into the game, you're yelling, "You suck, Jimmy."
I wouldn't boo. I'm not going to
boo you, Libby. I know your tendencies.
I'd be rooting in my head against him. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be like booing him.
I like when he was chucking those hook shots out of the corner like he was the second coming to Tommy Heinsohn or Connie Deerking back in the day, Jerry Lucas. And they say, well, I've never seen him take a shot like that before. Clearly, indifference had set in. He was trying his best to alienate the Miami Heat. The LeBron thing, I still have the lasting image and impression. Have you ever sat at a slot machine at the Circus in Las Vegas? No, you're not a gambler, Luca.
That I haven't.
You talk about being immersed in disgusting filth. I don't even think the Jamaica OTB parlor that is nearby to Aqueduct Racetrack compares. Oh, we got Lenn Robbins ready to go. Very good. We're going to cut right into Lenn Robbins. Let's do a quick timeout and then say hello to Lenn Robbins. And we'll come back and get some analysis on the tournament. But, I'd be inclined, I don't know, I'd probably just stand there and don't necessarily go crazy applauding. After the video, you got to applaud, and then you start yelling The usual disparaging remarks to Jimmy Butler, and hope that Golden State gets buried tonight. All right, we're coming back with Lenn Robbins, so we'll get some tourney analysis and maybe touch on some other things with the great Lenn Robbins, a longtime writer with the New York Post, and then has had the internet odyssey that many people have experienced, but always with solid and well-funded organizations. That when you have to respect that about Lenn. It was never like he was on some fly-by-night fugazi thing. Yeah, you got 2 viewers. So we'll have Lenn Robbins joining us in just a moment. Now that the time. I wonder if Len saw Connie Deerking play. It's 8:33. Play the ponies in style at Champions, the outstanding simulcasting room at beautiful Hialeah Park. Yes, the grand old lady of thoroughbred racing has never been more vibrant, and you can wager on the races from the top tracks around the country while enjoying a cocktail at the Brass Rail Bar or any of the fine food served throughout the facility. If poker is your game, you're covered in style, and you can play all your favorite Vegas-style games, including blackjack, craps, and roulette, in Hialeah Park's sizzling hot casino. Get a player's card when you walk through the door for all kinds of generous amenities, including our favorite, free play, when you come out to the ultimate casino and entertainment destination, Hialeah Park.
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar, and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.
Are you looking to buy your first home? Have you been turned down for a loan? Do you need to refinance or get money out of your home? Call Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. He's been helping the South Florida community get mortgages for 30 years.
Hi, this is Michael Kodsey, CEO of Choice Mortgage. We have the most competitive fixed rates in the market. Call me 24/7, 561-441-2730. And remember, I don't just work banking hours. To make the right choice for your home, call Choice Mortgage today.
Great Lenn Robbins, the program. Len, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Doing all right. Did they ever have pro wrestling at your Jewish center or temple? Pro wrestling. Did they ever stage any pro wrestling to raise funds?
Do you have any, family video of this congregation?
I think my rich Uncle Harry was really pretty much the financial support behind it. But they tried a lot of things to raise money, including they had top-notch pro wrestling. Wild Red Berry, the Kangaroos, Anthony Naraka. I mean, this was good stuff. This was solid Vince McMahon Sr. So, they tried a lot of things. All right, apparently that didn't happen at your place of worship.
That's very politically correct, right? To have, Chief J. Strongbow and George the Animal Steel.
Eating the turnbuckle like it was a piece of sponge cake in the back there, dipped in Manischewitz.
Grab a bagel and a schmear, plus some Defo and Lubie. Welcome back to the Defo Show.
All right, this is great. Unbelievable. This is a first. This is a breakthrough, is it not, Mike Lubitz?
I feel like we've had a lot of
program, but we never had Lenn Robbins on video ever in our history here of talking to Len. And we welcome the great Lenn Robbins to the program. Len, how are you, my friend? It literally is great to see you.
No one has ever looked at me and said those words, so I'm a little humbled and flattered. And although I will say you guys set me up perfectly, because when I logged in, the last thing I heard you say was disparaging remarks, and then you said up next is Lenn Robbins. And I'm like, all right, well, we've set the parameters for this show.
Well, you know how insane Lubie is from doing the many programs you've done with us over the years. And I don't know that I can really buy into the idea that Lubie will give Jimmy Butler polite applause. How would they treat Jimmy Butler in New York if he left the Knicks in the fashion that he left the Miami Heat?
I think everybody would just, say, hey, baby, got a buck?
Would they be throwing batteries from the upper deck there at the Garden if a player of his caliber who had made the kind of contribution, and it wasn't so brief, it was several years, more than 5 years. 4 or 5 years, Lubie, and played well, carried them to heights you never would have imagined, comes back tonight after being in a complete funk. I asked Lubie before you came on. I guess you were there and probably caught this if he'd ever played the slot machines at the Circus. And I can't think of anything. I mean, there's that lady with the lipstick that she smeared on her, like under her chin. She's got a cigarette, and it's just all ash. Looks like a Martin Short routine, but it's some old bag, and she's sitting there going, "Hey, do you have $10?" And Pat Riley's waiting for LeBron James to show up. I mean, you couldn't be any more disrespectful. And that's kind of how Jimmy left South Florida.
Well, first of all, please, if you're going to invite me onto the show, don't disparage my mother like that. Okay, really. The woman actually gave up smoking, so we have to give credit where credit is due. I think they'd welcome Jimmy back. I really do. And look, you guys know this. You got a taste of New York. You know what it's all about. Whatever they say about how nasty or rude or unsophisticated we are, and those are probably our good qualities now that I think about it. New Yorkers are really like an embracing, loving kind of crowd. I can't think of anyone we wouldn't welcome back except maybe like Alexandria Ocasio. I mean, all she did was cost us an Amazon plant. I mean, nice job there, right?
Yeah.
You give up, millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and I'm sorry, this is a sports show. I don't know what happened this morning here.
Hard not to go off the rails with what's going on. That's for sure. All right, Len, we want to zero in on the tournament a little bit. Your general observation so far, it's largely been a sea of chalk. So the Milk of Magnesia garglers are very happy with what was happening. We did have a couple of just brief Cinderella moments, but nothing overwhelmingly substantial. What did you think of what you've seen so far, and what does it lead you to believe about the upcoming couple of rounds?
Well, you beat me to the punch here a little. I don't think we usually, quote unquote, break news on this show.
Yeah.
But Milk of Magnesia is an official title sponsor for the Sweet 16. So, once again, you guys are so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
Look, the last time you guys had me on, just before the tournament started, you pressed me a couple of times. Who's my Cinderella? And I didn't really give you one, right? I said, I kind of like BYU, which is out of a power conference, so you can call them a Sweet 16. I just didn't think that this was a year, for the upset. And having said that, I mean, if Derek Queen doesn't, use his easy pass to get to the basket, right, then, maybe Colorado State gets through, right? But there wasn't going to be, in my mind, when I looked at the field, one of these, 14 or 15s or 16s that just jumped out. I know people thought that, well, there's really just like, it's Auburn or it's Duke, right? I thought there were like 8 teams that could win it. I think they're all still in it, right? And I didn't see that one team that we were going to interviewing like Sister Jean for like 5 weeks.
Didn't appear that way. Drake was the Cinderella. I think that was pointed to the most often by people that we had on the show, including the great Jim Larinaga. But nobody was conceding or subscribing to the idea that they were going to go on and win it all. And so I think at best your hope for any kind of long shot was that they win a game or two. And I don't even know if we really had much of that. Although BYU was a pretty good spot. And are they not a little bit of a danger there with their ability to hoist the three?
Well, I happen to know Steve Young. I covered Steve when he was a star quarterback at Greenwich High School in Greenwich, Connecticut. This is a true story, right? And I texted him last night. This part's not true. And he said they're renaming the school Basketball Young University. So look, even the Mormon Church, if you can get naming rights, right, take them, right?
Yeah.
Look, I like that team because I thought, like you said, they can hit the three and they are really physical, right? And usually, and I mean this, in a positive way, I understand that, we're in the world of the transfer portal and all that, but a lot of times BYU has guys who are a little older physically, emotionally, because, they go on missions, they come back. So, some of them are maybe not collecting Social Security, right? But they are getting certain benefits for being over 25, like you can rent a car then, right? Or,
Sure.
Right. So, I like that team. I also think they're really well coached. I like the stuff that they run. But, I mean, if you said to me today, who's the biggest winner in this tournament so far? Dusty May at Michigan.
Yes.
Think about that, right?
Yeah.
The guy gets like $1 million raise basically to honor his contract. Wait, Sean Miller just texted. I'm sorry. $1 million to honor his contract, right? He got $50,000 bonus when they won the what is it? The Big 31 now.
Yeah.
And then he got like another $75,000 bonus, I think, to get out of the first round. All this guy keeps doing is his job, and he keeps getting handsomely rewarded for it. I mean, what am I going to get for coming on this show? I don't know.
We have a gift certificate to a local restaurant.
Lubie's got some interesting stuff on the shelf behind him. I don't know. What are those, like Power Ranger figures in the background? What do you have? What is that?
Bobblehead of South Florida history. So let me ask you, so forget about the Cinderellas, because again, you actually nailed it. This was the 1 year, like especially recently, we've had a lot of double-digit seeds into the Sweet 16, and we've had double digits into the Elite Eight and even Final Four. This is the year that the only double digit is an SEC pseudo power with John Calipari. When you look at the top level, though, like you said, it was Auburn, Duke. A lot of people are on Houston. So far, it feels like Duke's been the most impressive. But Devo likes to bring up, and he's not wrong, like usually the team that wins it all did have a tough test. So is it a positive that Florida faced a tough bout with a UConn early on? Because we've seen that throughout the history of this tournament, that the team that prevails usually does struggle at some point.
Am I allowed to drink on this show?
Yeah,
Sure.
do whatever you want.
I thought you were going to drink alcohol.
Great
I
team.
am. Gosh.
Are you slugging down a couple of shots when you're standing up in front of your classes at your various professorial gigs?
I told you guys, I just came off my trip of judging the tequila contests in Mexico. All right, so I'm sorry, what was the question again?
You were talking about Duke there.
You feel just in general, like a lot of the time, like Florida just had a tough test, but Duke sort of just rolled through so far, right?
Yes.
Florida did have a tough test against a UConn. Do you think it sort of is needed in this tournament to get through some kind of tough sledding early on to win it all in the end?
Okay. It's not often I pat myself on the back because I'm never right. Again, last time I was on the show, right, you said, what's sort of like the key to the tournament? And I said, the team that wins it all is going to have that one game where they're either taken to the wire, right, or they're flat out lucky. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to the year that Virginia won it all, right? They got upset the year before as the first number one seed ever to go down. And then I think it was their second round game. They barely won that, right? I think they had to come back and win that, right? So the short answer is yes, absolutely. You need one of those games where whatever high you've been riding on or whatever your ranking or seeding is, right? You get reminded that no one is here in this tournament right now unless they deserve to be here. I know that sounds very cliche, but let's forget about, so much. Who did they play in the regular season? What's their quad 1 or quad 4? I didn't get quad 1s. One of my teachers actually put me in the closet 1 year. Seriously. Can you imagine that today? And Mrs. Palestino. Mrs. Palestino. She's the only teacher I remember because I said she's got stones, right? Put a student in a closet, close the door, right? And that was when New York City schools was so underfunded that they had this thing called portables. Basically, they rented like the storage part of an 18-wheeler, right? Set them up outside with like one little fan from, Bed Bath and Beyond and one of those little space heaters. And, that's where it was supposed to learn, right? And I talked too much, so she put me in one of those little metal closets and like coat closets and closed the door. And actually, that's when I learned about online betting. Anyway,
That's taking advantage of a negative situation.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you need at least one of those games, and you probably will face, more than one, right? Comes down to the wire, or you just flat out got lucky.
One of the big stories right there in your backyard, up there in the Big Apple. Of course, our good friend Rick Pitino, who we were rooting for, and many people thought that St. John's had a legitimate shot to go all the way. They were taking St. John's at 30-1, and it came down to 25-1. And I had several friends advocating to me, "Yeah, you got to bet your guy Pitino. He's a degenerate gambler at the track, and he's a perfect guy for this situation." Now we know they had a smothering defense, St. John's, and had a real good season, resurrected. Maybe the whole thing with Luke Hornacek checking out might have had some kind of occult impact on the way their season went. But we talked with Jim Larinaga, the great Jim Larinaga, on the show the week before the tournament, or before it started, and he was saying, well, they don't shoot threes and they're bricklayers from the free throw line. Two components that you would think would be catastrophic if you were going to try and win the NCAA championship. But controversy emerged, and I don't know that it's been resolved yet, with Luis being benched for the last, 10 minutes, 8-9 minutes of the game. What did you make of that? And it was the anti-Starks movement there, where Pat Riley, of course, who we were talking about, left John Starks in there and told him to keep shooting in that Knick game. In this case, Pitino puts the guy on a bench. Was there more there than just the fact that Luis was ice cold in the game?
All right, look, let's make sure we got this straight, right? Whenever you're talking about Rick Pitino, right, it's about Rick Pitino, okay? It's not about the player. It's about Rick, right? There has never been a microphone that Rick has been allergic to. There's never been a TV camera that he hasn't embraced, right? Now, I know it sounds like I'm kind of knocking the guy, but the truth is nobody has more respect for the game of basketball than Rick Pitino.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily a quote-unquote Rick Pitino guy. We're all aware of the fact that you don't want to get the same table in Kentucky that Rick used. As
you hope they change the tablecloth.
He gave whole new meaning to the term hors d'oeuvres, right? I might use that again. That just came.
Good one, yeah. You might want to write that one down. Then.
Kind of like that. Look, I don't think anybody, and I've said this before, if Rick Pitino would have stayed in college basketball, I think he would be the all-time winningest coach in college basketball history. And that's no disrespect to Coach K and I think that at the end of the day, he trusted his eye, right? Now, look, I totally respect and get the other part of it. Well, you can be, 1 for 30, and then all of a sudden, you keep shooting and you knock down 3 in a row.
Yep.
Their offense had been so bad that night, really, with the exception of Zuby, the kid who's, made more money for himself every game he played in the second half of the season. No one on that team was making shots. So I think he needed to find a way, a matchup, something that was going to work. Do I understand the criticism? Sure. Is that a valid counter argument? Absolutely. I'll take that guy's decision making, in the throes of the game over most other coaches in basketball.
How interested were the New York? Obviously they were all over St. John's, but you couldn't have had more of an attractive matchup than to have Pitino from a coaching standpoint going against John Calipari, and then Calipari, making a great account of himself there with Arkansas, and maybe even a legitimate threat to advance at least another round. How was that received, that matchup in the Big Apple?
I think people understood that this was going to be a difficult game. This is the first time I think I've ever been on any show, including the community service show I had to do when I was on parole, where I've been correct 3 times in one show. What's today's date? Is today like the 25th of March?
Yes.
Okay. There's a day for everything now in this country, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to humbly suggest that this be Lenn Robbins Day.
In our books.
So I guess I'm going to stay home and drink all day. Sorry, students.
Noble endeavor.
Apologize to the students at Montclair and Rutgers. Sorry
Yes.
about that. I'm sorry. We digress. Where were we?
You
Yeah,
were
talking about
3
Calipari.
times on our show, and you were proud of yourself.
Yeah.
You're getting to
Right.
the 3rd time you were right.
But what we were talking about before that.
Calipari had to do a job. I think you said something about Arkansas going into the tournament and Calipari going into the tournament. That was the 3rd thing that you predicted on our show that you feel you got right.
You guys thought I was joking about what's in the
No, I
bottle,
mean-
right? So I'll
This is
say
like
it
one of
again,
those
too.
shows where the cops show up at the studio to show you the impact of alcohol on driving. And whoever the host is, whether it's a DJ or a sports talk guy or a talk show host, is getting progressively more wasted during the course of the show. And by the end, we're going to have you guys on the program here. And then the guy drives off. He goes home.
I don't know how far back you guys go, although
Yeah.
now that I'm seeing you guys for the first time, probably to like the Cro-Magnon era or something. I don't know. But the beautiful complex that I live in, and I use the word complex loosely,
Yes.
right? I think I only have 5 minutes. Somebody else needs to use the phone. I just realized. One of the apartment that we are in actually has an escape hatch.
Jesus.
There's a door that's locked and bolted from both sides, but it leads out into like the hallway. And I think this was when they sort of like reconfigured some of the apartments, because I'm in a beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no view apartment here in Manhattan. So yeah, if the cops come, by the way, I got an out. Look,
Escape hatch, yes.
St. John's was a great story, right? They rekindled all the ghosts and echoes and everything, as you, Defo, wisely alluded to, no better way to honor Lou Carnesecca than having a team recapture, the back pages, the front headlines, of college basketball in New York City. It's been missing for almost 3 decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much community service you can jam into 3 decades, by the way? I mean, that's incredible. So, but the reality is they were an analytical nightmare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they shot free throws a little better, in the second half of the season. They shot threes a little bit better in the second half of the season, but you are what you are, right?
Yep.
I remember the year, I think I mentioned last time, that Kansas won the national championship, right?
Yeah.
Luke, Calipari had, the team at Memphis. I think they lost 1 game going into that tournament, right? And they were up until the last seconds of the game when Derrick Rose misses a free throw, right? Mario Chalmers brings it down the length of the court, right? Bang! Forces overtime.
Yep.
Kansas wins going away. So
Yep.
you are what you are. And the SEC, almost every team there that I can think of, they are athletic, right? They are athletic players in that league. So I'm sure that Rick Pitino looked at it and said, we can't have one of those, 3 for 27s or, what was it, 2 for 24 on threes. I could go to one of those, courts in the city here where the rims are, metal, right?
Yeah.
And the backboards are metal, right? And in some places, the court itself, were recycled handcuffs or something, right? And ask 3 kids to take, 25 threes, they'd hit 7 of them, right?
Yes.
So, you can't have a game like that in the tournament, shooting wise, and expect to move on.
Calipari was great afterwards, too. Not only did he have the great line about they had us in the coffin and forgot to nail it shut, but he actually said, and very humbly so, hey, look, they shot the ball horribly. They make a couple of shots, we lose. So, or they're right in there. So, yeah, I mean, that was just so atrocious of a brick fest that it became almost unbearable to watch, as competitive as the game was. All right, who do you see emerging? I mean, do you have a line on everybody's very proud of themselves? They still have their Final Four all in place for the most part, as the number 1 seeds are live. Do you have a lean on who might emerge now after watching the first couple of rounds of games with the Ultimate Championship?
I knew you guys were going to go here. And you should, because, you're inquiring minds, and, this is a basketball show or a sports show, despite the, tangents that I might go on at least.
We're not inclined to do that on this program, by the way.
Never. Yeah, we
never step out of our zone here, our wheelhouse.
Right.
We were talking about professional wrestling at your Jewish center, though. Which, by the way, I was talking about how nutrition has changed in sports, because Lubie brought up how fit the girls were that worked out at Florida State when he was there as compared to when I was at Syracuse, when everybody was in hibernation from September on because it was so freaking cold. And I remember they were pushing using salt tablets. And you couldn't have any more of an atrocious health problem or detrimental product to put in your body than salt. We didn't know that at the time. We were gargling with this stuff. But I'll never forget the sign outside the Belmar Jewish Center where it said, Passover services Saturday, pro wrestling tonight. That was on the market. But you were saying, we're giving you a little time to sort of hedge on. And look, nobody's going to be upset. It seems like it's fairly wide open, as you said. You probably still have, of the 16 teams left, maybe, 6, 7, 8 that could win it all, and you wouldn't be shocked. So, which way you're leaning? I mean, we're looking at the stats. Lubie alluded to it. Duke, the team that dominates the first couple of rounds after leading the season, being the best scoring differential team during the regular season, it usually doesn't win. So, is there a threat to John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils?
Last night my wife said to me, "What do you got going tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, I got to get up a little early because I want to do that radio show down in Miami, right?" She's the smart one in the family, obviously, right? And she said, "Hey, what are those guys that pay you?" And I said, "No, you don't understand. It's not that kind of thing." I said, these are like my friends. And she said, "Oh, how many times have you been out with them?" I said, "I've never even seen the guys, right?" And she said, so why do you do this? And I said, it's the only show where you can go on where the guys will talk about anything, right? Right? Bar mitzvahs in the morning, pro wrestling at night, right?
Yes.
A woman who I thought they described as my mother, with a slot machine with, ass hanging off the cigarette, and and I know exactly what you're talking about. It looks like they were like on the subway trying to do their lipstick when somebody hit the emergency brake, right? And the whole thing.
It's on our nose.
This is the greatest entertainment.
Sure.
Really. Kudos to you guys. Really, kudos.
There you go.
Okay, so sometimes at this point of the year, right, you get like a superstar who's kind of like dominated college basketball or any sport, and then they get into like the tournament, whatever it may be, and they don't look as good, or people start like sniping or picking apart their game. Okay. I hope we're really embracing and enjoying Cooper Flagg. This guy is a once in a million talent. And the way that Duke team won what are they in now? Are they still in the ACC? I don't even know what conferences there are anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore, the ACC.
And I know the ACC was like, really down this year. It seems like we've been saying that, by the way, for like several years now, right? The ACC is really down. Somebody's going to have to stick a wooden stake in those guys' hearts, right? They play defense, they rebound, they can shoot, they've got it, right? Now, having said that, every one of those number one seeds are alive. I think all the 2 seeds, are still alive. Is that correct?
Except for St. John's.
Except for St. John's, right? Then it's up, right? Look, I have Tennessee. Why? Because I'm confused the orange shades with Florida. So So great. Now I'm
Dementia
hating
is a tough
Tennessee
thing.
and Florida, right? Okay, another 2 states I can't cross the border. Okay.
Yeah.
You realize I'm like the only guy who can't drive directly from New York to Florida because I'm hated in like every state along. Right. Duke now hates me. Right. Carolina's always hated me. Right. They think I'm a Duke guy. Yeah, I mean, I have Tennessee because I love the point guard. They play defense. They've got a couple of scorers. They've got a big man in the middle. You know what? I just described like each one of those, like, top 8, to like, 12 seeds. So the only thing I hope for, and I don't want to be a killjoy. I want this, Sweet 16 round to give us like 5 games that would just like, whew, I need another shot, right?
Yeah.
That Maryland Colorado State game so far was probably the closest we
Only
came.
have like 1 or 2 really good games.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if they ratcheted up the excitement factor and quotient a little bit. By the way, I mean, your wife's question was certainly a legitimate one.
Look, I've told you guys
what the hell
this.
are you doing to yourself?
I think I've told you guys this before. Like, if you want someone legitimate, I can probably, get her onto the show.
I kind of want to do it.
God knows what my offer would have to be, like an NIL deal for like, Austin. By the way, I know we got to go. I just want to say 2 things real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Juju Watkins, the star player at USC, for her to blow out her knee in this time of the year, man, my heart breaks on those kind of stories, right? Sure. And is Carson Beck opening his own car dealership in South Florida?
Pretty good pad there for a guy that's in college.
Yeah.
Dormitories at Syracuse, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely a change. And our question was one last thing, because you would have some insight into this, whereas we had no idea what we were talking about. But what we're looking at Juju Watkins, and I mean, you would be less inclined to abdicate your last couple of years of eligibility in college if you were in a women's game, would you not? Because you're probably making out better on NIL in college than you would be in the WNBA. I believe that would be true. So she was, I would think she's likely to come back. No, would that be the scenario that you see?
Boy, that's a great question. And honestly, the realistic answer is I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of all her particular NIL deals. I know she's doing really well, right? Yeah. Look, obviously the WNBA salary, has never been suffice because half these players have to go over to Russia and learn how to drink vodka that somebody made in their backyard that morning, right? And somebody's got to remind them not to take their marijuana cartridges with them, right? When
don't be vaping,
right? Because apparently vaping has a very different the description in Russia, right?
Was that the worst trade in basketball history, though? Brittany Griner for the Merchant of Death. That's a lot to give up, even for a top-notch player.
Can you send me a clip just of that that exchange? Because the next time my wife says to me, like, can't you like take out the trash or something in the morning and go on. I just want to like play her that, right? Brittany Griner for the Merchant of Death.
That beats McHale and the Chief for Joe Barry Carroll.
The Kareem trade, yeah, for sure.
You're saying that what we got fleeced more than like more than the Vikings did, in the Walker trade.
Do we have to throw in draft picks with Mr. Boot? I don't think so. Len, we love you, man.
You're the best.
And it was an outright pleasure to have you on the video portion of the program. So now that we know that we can do this, Warren, your wife, will be asking for your presence on the show even more frequently than we did in the past. And you were a regular on Degenerate Friday. You were a card-carrying member of the Degenerate Brethren. So we love having you on. This was a special treat for us this morning, and thanks so much, as always, for being with us.
Guys, my pleasure. The thing I like best about Degenerate Fridays, even though it was a radio show, I get up every morning and do my makeup. Go have a great weekend, all right? Go have a great day. Go enjoy the rest of the tournament.
You're a great American, Lenn Robbins. Thank you so much for being with us. Lenn Robbins, ladies and gentlemen.
That was classic.
That was great. I really enjoyed that, especially when I was kind of like I threw it to a break because I figured he was hanging on the phone there. And if we could have popped him on, that would have been even better because the more time we spend with Lenn Robbins, the happier we are. So very good stuff coming from Len. Now going off to teach courses at Montclair and Rutgers as well. All right, very good. All right, we will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks very much for being with us. It was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Lenn Robbins. Later on today, a couple of things happening on the Bleacher Brothers network. And Al Bernstein, our good friend Al Bernstein, going to join A.J. Johnson on his show.
Nice.
Talking about George Foreman and maybe some other things that are happening in boxing. And speaking of boxing, I will feature on Conversations today, 4 o'clock on the network, an interview. My friend Peter Kahn handles one of the hottest prospects. And this is a guy that's selling out Madison Square Garden like he was Billy freaking Joel.
Nice.
A guy named Xander Zayas, a Puerto Rican descent, but hails from South Florida. And number one contender, he was just out in Vegas where they had the obligatory, after a championship fight, he's the next in line to fight the champion, the Towering Inferno, Sebastian Fundora. 2 really good guys, by the way, but well-spoken. Xander Zayas going to be with us along with Peter Kahn. We'll talk some boxing, and he's in that 154-pound division, so should share some opinions about a lot of different things, including Crawford going against Canelo and some of the other happenings in that division, which is very exciting. So look forward to that at 4 o'clock today. And then 8 o'clock on with the Bleacher Brothers show with A.J. Johnson. The great Al Bernstein. Always an intriguing interview with Al Bernstein. We love him, and I think he might even break out into song there because who knew he had a record out?
Nice.
If you ask me, less likely to have a musical career, Oscar De La Hoya or Al Bernstein.
Oh, God.
You would probably say Al, no?
Probably, yes.
Oscar actually got nominated for a Grammy with his record, believe it or not.
Good.
Whereas Roy Jones Jr., I'll never forget my friend Brad Jacobs telling me when I asked him about Roy Jones Jr. Musical career, he said, as soon as his album and the CD came out, I threw him a copy to Classifieds.
Exactly.
All right, we have to get out of here. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time as we leave you know that.
The time.
It's 9:09.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my